I just saw a video that's several months old, but it deals with a circumstance that pervades our lives, whether we recognize it or not, and that is who can you trust, and why is it that we can't trust them? Uh, anyway, there's an interview or a video I saw with a guy named Pete Judo, and he reviews the case of a professor, Francesca Gino, who is formerly of Harvard. She was found to plagiarize and produce fake data. This happened over a period of years. Uh, Someone found it. They presented it. The people at Harvard looked at the evidence and came to the conclusion that yes, she had done these things, and so they let her go, basically. And then she took it to court to sue Harvard. So anyway, that's you can look that up yourself. Francesca Gino of Harvard. Uh, Judo, Pete, the guy who's doing the video, states that the professor's co-workers found it highly unlikely that she engaged in unethical behavior. Now, this is interesting. So she was proved to have done it, but when people, before the process was totally gone through to review it, people just didn't believe it. She was highly unlikely to have engaged in unethical conduct. And I would say that probably most people that you know would expect that you are highly unlikely to, do something unethical. Are they right? Hopefully they are. But I think this attitude reflects that the fellow professors or researchers or office staff, support staff, whoever they were, maybe they were grad students, I don't know. Uh, but I think it reflects that their belief in adhering to agreed code of conduct, and they can't imagine that someone else is doing otherwise. So, and look, plagiarism is probably any school you go to, you probably sign a form, sign something that says, I will not plagiarize, right? Particularly if you're in a graduate school level kind of thing. So now, we just often can't imagine, because we live by certain mores, certain sets of rules, certain cultural uh, boundaries, that we can't imagine people doing things that they often end up doing. When I drive down the road, there's people doing all kind of crazy things. I'm going, what are they doing? But how do you turn left whenever you're in the far right lane and there's three lanes? That to me makes no sense. I don't know how anyone even bothers to do that. You can always drive down the road, find a place to turn around and come back, and then take go back the way you need to go. Anyway, now, and my wife and I, we can't understand why a neighbor moved in and had a party until 3 o'clock in the morning, because we, trying to be good neighbors to the people who we've been neighbors to for 20 years, we wouldn't dream of doing that. I mean, if we had a party outside, we'd probably go to 10 o'clock because our neighbor may need to go to work the next morning. You don't know when your neighbor's going to work. Just because it's Saturday or Sunday, that doesn't mean anything. At least be done by 11 o'clock. But anyway, so you see, we just can't imagine. And when it happens, you're going, what? What are they doing? You're incredulous because they're doing things you can't imagine them doing. So anyway, now when I was a grad student, and I did postgraduate studies for 5 years, so I had plenty of opportunity to plagiarize in 5 years. I never plagiarized in 5 years at any of that time. Um, Yet I had classmates who I thought were decent people. I didn't have anything. I didn't think anything negative particularly of them. I mean, maybe I didn't like their dressing style or the food they ate or etc. But whatever that might be. But I thought they were decent people, and yet I was sort of surprised to find out how some of them just so casually plagiarized, and you know, I think all of us are taught not to plagiarize all through school. It only takes a little bit of effort to take whatever you're reading and rearrange the sentence where it's not straight out plagiarism that shows that you understand what the sentence said at least, and you're basically regurgitating the same thought, but you're not just taking something right out of the book and just typing paragraphs. just That just sort of shocked me that someone would do that, because I wouldn't do that. And how much does it take to put a footnote at the bottom of the page? I wouldn't do that. I assume no one else would do that, but people did. They weren't, you wouldn't go, oh, these are evil. They weren't murderers or rapists or anything. They weren't blowing up buildings, but they were plagiarizing, right? So, can you trust these people? I'm sure their employers trust them, but at what level do you stop trusting them? You have to go, okay, I like this person fine and dandy, but I wouldn't trust them to throw them any, what's the term? The old, anyway, wouldn't trust them very far. So, now I've never plagiarized, but I'm not saying that I'm an innocent, and that there's nothing I've ever done that was improper in life. And when I was, and I admitted this to my English teacher, at like the 20th high school reunion. But for example, when I was a kid in high school, we had some assignment to like read 5 books during that quarter or semester or whatnot, and it got down to the end of the semester, and I'd only been able to read 3. Now that was my fault, but I'd only read 3, right? And so I was under a crunch, and it's like, how am I going to read the other 2 books and write book reports? Because that's what we had to do. It's an English class. Read the book, write a book report. How can I do that? I mean, that'd be murder. Well, not literally. So what I decided to do is I would just come up with stories myself. So I wrote book reports on stories. Now, I was a very creative guy, right? I mean, I was essentially outlining a story that you might do, a short story or a narrative that of some type that I could either do a short story or a book on if I was a writer myself. So that was creative, but that's not what I was getting a grade on. I was getting a grade on how one book was about the Korean War and one book was about the Civil War, and something that happened in both those incidences. But so I wrote a good book report. English wise, I wrote a good report, but I didn't do what I was supposed to do. Okay, that was wrong. Creative, but wrong. So the question that this raises is, are people inherently good or inherently evil? Because that's really, these co-workers are saying she's unlikely to do it. Why? Why do you think she's unlikely to do it? I think the further I go into life, the more I'm going to assume that people are likely to do all kinds of things we wouldn't expect them to. If the question was, do you expect them to do it? And I would say, no, I wouldn't expect people to do things. They seem to be good people. But is it highly unlikely they wouldn't? I would never say highly unlikely that anybody would do anything unless I knew them intimately and knew that they're not. If a murder occurred, no, they could not have. They could have not have murdered. They could not have stolen that thing or whatever. I might be able to do that if I knew them intimately, but outside of that, I can't. So there's different philosophies. And in Christianity, supposedly, everyone is evil. From a biblical account, everyone is evil. That's whether you're, and then there's all kind of sects that you can argue whether they're truly Christian or not, that claim to be Christian. But all of them agree basically, theologically or doctrinally, that humanity is evil, okay, and that we are saved through the sacrifice of Jesus. So now other religions basically see the issue isn't, are you born good or evil? So basically they would say you're born good, I guess. But the key for them is that what you do is what you are. So as long as you are doing the thing that is considered good, then you are a good person. It doesn't matter how evil you are. Now, of course, if you're reading the Gospels and listening to what Jesus has to say about this kind of stuff, he's just raking people over the coals for having evil hearts, regardless to what kind of what he says, like your whitewashed tombs or something like that, right? They look good on the outside, but they're dead on the inside. Anyway, among other things, that's it. That's what Jesus says in the Gospels. But as he's talking to certain people, so the question is, do you do good? You may face temptation, but you are good because you overcome the temptation and do good. Now, for in the Lord's Prayer for Christians, we ask, deliver us from evil, deliver us from temptation. Okay, don't even put us in the position of temptation. We don't need that. Why? Because from the Christian point of view, you're an evil person, and that you don't need that temptation, right? Keep it away from us. But from other faiths, well, temptation is what we face, and of course you do in Christianity as well. In life, you face temptations, don't you? But what's key is what you do. So that brings me to my personal thought on this: is that people who think that all other people are good, are good rule followers. So I mean, regardless to what the Christian official doctrine is, I've sat and had many, many, many discussions with people who are Christians or consider themselves Christians, and they think that all humanity is good. All people are good. People are inherently good. You can tell people are inherently good because whenever the hurricane comes, everybody goes out and helps each other. Well, I think that might have something to do with Stockholm syndrome kind of thing, right? We're all in it together. Okay, when hard times come, people do try to help out each other. There's a bonding that happens there. But now I remember back during right after Hurricane Helene in Asheville, I was watching a video of some people who they wanting about their experience. These were people who just videoed whatever they were doing, that kind of, oh, we're going to take vacation, or some people do that. And so and they got stuck in Asheville because of the washing out of everything. They were stuck. They couldn't get out of Asheville because the flood was all around them. And in the beginning, a few hours, first day, everything was great. People were being nice and helping each other. But by the second or third day, some people were getting antsy, and it was getting to be rough. And they said, "We got to get out of here." Okay, that's when our true nature comes about. Is when we get between a rock and a hard place. We can walk through a short piece of desert and be okay. But if the desert is 20 or 100 miles long and you got choices you got to make about your own survival, all of a sudden things change. And we can do things that we otherwise would consider evil, right? We would all consider it evil, period. So anyway, but the thing is that people are inherently good because we can't imagine that people aren't following the rules. So they're inherently good. Maybe a person who follows the rules is probably somebody who was a good boy or a good girl, right? People who are bad kids and get told that all the time often grow up to really they can't imagine themselves being good. So they do break the rules. Why? Because their parents or whoever their significant influencers are had told them, you are bad, you are evil. So you're evil. And so you do evil. But for all the good people, and evil people certainly believe there's evil in the world because they're evil, and so they can see everybody as being evil, right? But if you're good, it's hard to imagine. Uh, Now, for me, I was a have older siblings, and I saw them break the rules. And when they break the rules, all hell broke loose. It wasn't good in times in my house with my father in particular. Uh, uh, he would get mad, and then we'd pay for it, right? So don't break the rules. That's what I learned. So I was really good at following the rules and negotiating. And it was important to figure out. Let's see, I saw that happen to that brother, so I'm going to make sure I don't do that, and that's the way I lived my life. And I was a good boy, but in reality, I was not good. I was just good at following the rules, and I was prideful about how well I followed those rules, and those other idiots who didn't follow the rules, they got what they deserved because they were not following the rules. Um, but I wasn't good. I mean, there were things that were I did in secret. They were, if I went and smoked a cigarette behind the barn, I wasn't supposed to be smoking cigarettes. Right? I knew that, or whatever it was. Right? If if you hid your Playboy underneath the mattress because you don't want your parents to find it, well, you're if it was good, you just lay it out on the bed, wouldn't you? Okay. Now today that's not an issue because all you have to do is go online and look at any page on the internet, and if it knows you're a male, it's going to pop up there with these half naked women. They're posed the same way as a Playboy was posed, 50 years ago. So it's on your bed that way. I don't know. That's an aside. Forget it. So anyway, just because we don't admit our evil, because we're a good boy or good girl, doesn't mean that we're not doing misbehaving kind of stuff. Now, I didn't grasp my own true evil until I was, middle aged. That is, I was consider myself a good person, and uh, sort of struggled all along, going, well, I'm a good person, but there were things I did that I knew were not good things to do. Things that were society would say you shouldn't do that. But of course, when you do those things, you do them in secret, don't you? You don't want anybody to know it, and they might not be considered big things. Uh, what about for any of us anyway? Coworkers. So the coworkers for this woman, this professor, I believe were probably either do-gooders or they might have thought they were the only deceitful person in the population there in the department or whatnot, and they were actually just getting by. They were faking it. They were doing good deeds. They were playing the game correctly, and nobody knew that they had ulterior motives in their heart, right? So they, like you know, for the average person, do you take your do you lie to your wife about something, uh, or your sibling, or your parents, or your employees, and just to avoid conflict? Okay, do you take home office supplies without asking the employer? And you might rationalize it. You may say, well, he doesn't care or she doesn't care, or everyone else is doing it, so it must be okay. That doesn't mean it's okay, does it? It's still stealing in reality, right? So anyway, but there are things, and things like taking home a paper, a pad of paper from the office might be something that you consider um, not that bad, because there are other things that are just beyond your imagination, and you wouldn't do them. You're not going to murder. You're not going to rape. You're not going to do those kind of things. Those are beyond your imaginations. That's not what people in your neighborhood or in your family, etc., do. Okay, so so as you can tell, I think most people are evil, and things that, but most of us consider evil. I believe from the discussions I've had throughout life, we consider evil to be things that don't go the way that we want to. So when a loved one dies, that's evil. When when we don't get the grade we deserve, the professor is the evil person for not appreciating what we, our circumstances. I was an adjunct professor for a few years, and I had a student who her grandmother or something had died. At least that's the story she told. I don't think that she was lying. She could have been, but I don't think so. But so she had a funeral she had to go to. She wasn't able to study for the test the way she might have normally done it, and she took the test, and she made, instead of an A as she was used to making, she made like a C or something. And she wanted me to give her an A because, hey, it's not her fault that she didn't make an A. It was the circumstances. Okay, so then she was angry at me. I was the bad guy by saying, I'm sorry. You took the test. That's the way it goes. She could have studied for it at another time in another way, etc. Anyway, that's the way the ball bounces. Everything doesn't go our way all the time. So, so we think that when things don't go our way, then there's evil there. When innocents are harmed, uh, in, intentionally or unintentionally, that's evil. And a lot of times we blame God, and we say, well, how can God let evil happen? And well, when we define evil, and you look down into your heart and see what you define evil as, and if you define it as things that don't go my way, then you're going to blame God or something. Now, this professor, obviously, she thought that her plagiarism and her falsification of data was okay because she went all the way to suing the Harvard to get her job back or whatnot. Okay, so Harvard was evil. She's the one that had done the things that was unethical, but Harvard was the evil entity in her world, right? Uh, so evil is not in whether or not we do good things or have good things happen to us, but in the inner struggle that to do good. So that is, we know what good is, uh, but there's something that the opportunity comes, and the question comes: are you going to do good? But your inner self is saying, like, I hate that person. I'd rather see that person in the hospital than me help them. Right? I'd rather I'd rather see their car break down. I'd rather see them walk 10 miles to work than me give my neighbor a ride to his work because I can't stand my neighbor. Okay, I'm not saying that about my neighbors. I'm just giving that as an illustration. So, and when you do good, then you say, well, I'm just going to suck it up and go help them. Guess what? You've done good, but you still hate your neighbor. You still despise them. You still have this animosity that shouldn't be in your heart, right? That's not a good thing. Uh, so evil can exist even though you're doing good deeds. So why fake data and plagiarize? Well, maybe because you want fame. Maybe you want to measure up to some expectation that either you have for yourself or you think others have for you or your parents had for you or whatever. Maybe you're looking for more income. Regardless to why you do the thing that's evil, uh, the thing is the evil is in your heart and it's there just waiting to be pricked. Now, from a Christian point of view, we have Jesus telling us that, as he told one person who called him good, he said, none of us are good, only God is good. So I'm not good. If you're not a Christian, you might not agree with this worldview, this idea. But I think it's pretty evident that how good we are is comes from in here. It's not by just the things we do. But go ahead and do good things, because if I run into you in life, I want to make sure that you're going to treat me good. All right. Anyway, please like, subscribe to my channel, comment, tell me what you think about good and evil, or how you can trust people. See uh, how far can you trust people? You got to know them pretty well. And there's if you're married, there's certain things you trust your spouse about, and there's other things you go, I know she's not ever going to wash my so and so piece of clothing the way I want them to, or because I can count on that. That's not evil. That's just I can't trust them to do what I want, right? Anyway, like, subscribe, comment, and do good, but try to recognize that there's evil all over the place. So don't be surprised when it pops up in your neighborhood. Have a good day.